Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Invictus Racing League here on Twitch, bringing you Season 12 Round 9 action from the Xbox Realistic Performance Division live from the circuit Paul Ricard for the French Grand Prix. My name is Keiran Wright92, and unfortunately Andrew can't be here this evening, so you're stuck with me, but all is not lost as I am joined by the ever wonderful and entertaining Matt. Good evening, Matt. How are you?
I'm fantastic. How are you, buddy?
I am not too bad, mate. Not too bad at all.
Excellent. Looking forward to another, hopefully, very exciting race, if last week's anything to go by.
Indeed, indeed. So we are here at the circuit Paul Ricard in La Castellet in France. It is a 3.6 mile circuit with 15 corners, 10 of them to the right, 5 to the left. It is, of course, a 50% race here in IRL, so it will be 27 laps of this circuit with the C4, C3 and C2 tyres in place. When you are looking at pit stops, you're looking at an average pit loss time of about 23 seconds here. So most of the time you will see these drivers look to go for a one-stop strategy. You may occasionally see people go for the two-stop, but that will be up to the specific drivers themselves. So, Matt, for those who may have missed last week, would you like to give the wonderful people who are watching a quick recap as to what happened last week at Silverstone?
Where to start? It was an absolutely incredible race. Action right from the beginning, right through to the last lap. Botch Gerbil eventually come out on top, driving a fantastic race. If anybody didn't catch last week's race, I would highly recommend watching it back. You definitely won't be disappointed. There was battles all up and down the track. It was just a fantastic race, Keiran.
Indeed, I must say, I did have a little watch of the race myself live, and I did have to watch it again on Friday morning. I'm not going to lie, it was that entertaining.
Well, definitely when there's the break from F1, it definitely feels, that sort of race fills the gap, doesn't it?
It does. It most definitely does. So, as you may know, if you are with myself and Dom on a Tuesday night for the Equal Performance F1 division, this is a realistic performance, so things are a little bit different here. You don't have the people in the same cars. They may not necessarily be teammates per se. So, for example, you may have, for example, the Haas team. You've got Sync Rainer here in the Haas along with Thunderdome. Neither of those two guys are actual. There's no guarantee that these guys could actually be teammates in the championship. This is all done on realistic performance. So the faster the car is in real life, the better the car is going to perform on the game. So the fastest cars on this track are going to be the Mercedes cars, and the slowest will be down to the Williams cars. The better the driver's done in the standings, the slower the car they are in, which does, and I'm sure Matty will agree here, make for some very, very interesting racing when the lights go out.
It really does. Sometimes you can see a very, very, very quick driver struggling to handle certain cars, and it gives everybody a fair chance, which is, I think, the most important thing to keep the league competitive.
Indeed. So I'll just have a quick look at the championship standings. Currently in our drivers' standings, we have got DJ Danny for the Hot Shot Racing team, leading the drivers' championship by 15 points, with the only Fools and Horsepower driver of Light Shock 16 in second place. And in third, we have got the Shark Nipples F1 racer of James F1 ETC, just those 6 points further back. And in terms of the constructors, as we say, it's that Hotshot Racing team of DJ Danny and his partner in crime, Fair Moto, holding a 13-point lead over that Shark Nipples team of James F1 ETC and Sir Sharks, and the W7 team of Raza 410 and Stallion W7, 7 points back in third. So, Matt, you've been concentrating on the realistic performance for a couple of weeks now. Who have you got your eye on here in France?
There's so many competitive drivers. DJ Danny always seems to have a very, very solid race no matter what car he's in. Obviously, last week's winner, Botch Gerbil, again, fantastic driver. This race could actually go either way. There's no way to choose just one driver, to be honest with you, Keiran. There's so many talented drivers out there tonight.
That's what we like to hear. Talented drivers makes for talented racing. It also makes for very intense racing as we are getting ready for qualifying here in France. What we will quickly do is I will just run you through the teams that we have. You have the Pit Stop Boys of IRL Mats 21 and Jamie 29X. In the Hotshot Racing team, I did mention slightly earlier on, we have got DJ, Danny and Fairmoto. The Shark Nipples F1 team of James, F1 ETC and Sir Sharks. Only Fools and Horsepower are being run by Lightshot 16 and his partner Thunderdome. The W7 team is Stallion W7 and Raza 410. The Viper Motorsports team of Botch Gerbil and the Josh 32. The Brabham Racing team of AC Oak Hill 04 and St Johnston 02. The Wells F1 team is run solo by El Senado. The Pain in the Rain team, again, run solo by Sync Rayner, who I do believe got a second place last week. I'm sure Matty will be able to confirm that in just a second. And the final team is the Coconut Water F1 team, run by Ice Cream 05.
You're completely spot on, mate. Sync Rayner did finish in P2. Again, it was a fantastic race from him coming through the field to take P2 in the end. I think there's so many fast drivers to watch out for on the track today that I think penalties is going to be something that these drivers are going to really have to watch today, because it could change the whole outcome of the race.
Indeed, it will. Penalties are something that impacted the F1 side of things on Tuesday night. If you did miss that one, please be sure to go back and have a look at that. But penalties did play a very large factor in the outcome of that race as well. But as you can see here, we are now in qualifying, guys, just waiting to see which driver is going to be the first one to make their way out. There we go, we can now see some drivers starting to leave the pit racing, or leaving their pits and are ready to go racing. Who is the first man out? It is going to be Sync Rayner, the man that we did very previously just mention. We have got some of the guys in the chat. We will have a quick chat with the guys in the chat. We have got Alfie 234567, Chloe Rebecca 97, The Noodle, my partner in crime on a Tuesday night, complaining that the bot has just told him to stop spamming caps. Well, listen to the bot, Noodle. Listen to the bot. That's what it's there for.
Always trouble when he's around.
It is definitely trouble when Noodle's around, as you and I know all too well, Matty, seeing as Noodle was in a party with us on Xbox just before we went live.
Seems to be quite a few cars going out on the track to start their laps. Could be very congested, and traffic could cause a bit of an issue on people's first flying laps here, Keiran.
Indeed,
as it looks
indeed.
Like Sync Rayner is going to be the first one to set a flyer.
It definitely looks so. Just coming around to turn 11 now on his outlap in the Haas this week. So, as I said, guys, the better the car is known for performing IRL, the slower the driver in the car, so to speak. So with Sync Rayner being in the Haas, it is done on it's done on the championship standings. So with Sync Rayner only racing one race so far, he is quite low down the standings, but of course means that he gets the Haas. No, sorry, he finished second last week, so of course is in the Haas as one of the faster drivers. As he comes through Sector 1 now, we will quickly jump on board with Sync Rayner in the Haas as he comes up through turn 3 and 4. Very, very good line there through turn 5 as well, coming up to what would be the first DRS detection point, which is just there as he moves himself onto the main DRS straight. There is your DRS line. He has got that rear wing wide open, trying to get as much as he can out of this car on the medium tyre, which is an interesting strategy, Matt, for him to be on that medium rather than the faster soft tyre, as most of the grid are currently on.
Yes, only two drivers opting for the medium tyre, Sync Rayner and Jamie29X in the pink Racing Point. So it seems like everybody else is going aggressive, trying to get the track position. But we will have to see if that's going to work out for them later on into the race.
Indeed we shall. Keiran moving up now through turn 12. A pretty strong lap from him in the Haas so far. Pretty much planting the car on that optimum racing line, which is the fastest line you can possibly get. A little bit of a lock up there as he comes into the penultimate corner. Around the final corner now is the final drive up to the line with his DRS wide open. Keiran is about to cross the line and sets a 1:31.354. And James F1 ETC just behind puts in a 1:32.4. And that is very much eradicated by the Renault of Stallion. And again, even more by the Racing Point of St Johnstone. 1:29.206 is currently your lead time.
Absolutely fantastic first qualifying laps there from St Johnstone. I think he's coming out to prove a point today. Fantastic lap.
Indeed. Let's have a quick look. We'll give Neil mod privileges just so he can stop complaining. We have been told by the admins that we have got a dry race as well as a dry qualifying session, which should make things just that little bit easier for the drivers, knowing they haven't got to change too much in terms of strategies. I know that did play a little bit of a factor on Tuesday night, as we actually had a dry qualifying and a wet race, Matt.
Wow. It's also interesting to see how the drivers would set the car up in that situation, with their setups in terms of whether you go to try and get track position with a dry setup and then struggle in the race, or whether you lose track position with a wet setup qualifying and then have more confidence to maybe overtake in the race. Luckily today they don't have to worry about that too much.
They do not indeed. We have got the Josh 32 racing today. There was a little bit of a worry that Josh may not have been able to make it this evening, but it is very good as always to see the Josh 32 taking to the track and showing us what he can do on the realistic side of things as he comes up through the final two corners now of this French Grand Prix. Botch Gerbil has had a collision with St Johnstone and has received a 5-place grid penalty. That is going to make things very, very interesting for Botch Gerbil as the Josh passes the line 1:30.336, enough for P5.
That collision, I think, may have been on pit entry, judging that both drivers are now in the pits, Keiran. So it'd be very interesting to see what happened there. But as you said, that's going to affect Botch Gerbil's race. It'd be interesting to see if he's going to go for a change of strategy now he's received that penalty, to maybe try and get a more advantage in the race. And
the logical thing to do would be to do exactly that. Get yourself on those soft tyres again. Try and get as much as you can out of that car. Get yourself as high up the grid as possible, especially knowing that you have got that 5-place grid drop at the end of this qualifying session. So for those who are unsure of what that means, give you an example. If for whatever reason Botch Gerbil was to qualify in first position, he would actually start the race in 6th place because of that grid penalty.
It's certainly going to change his whole race. Alcinado seems to be on a very, very quick lap here, Keiran, to set his first time in the Ferrari.
We are on board with Alcinado now, coming up around through turn 11. Very, very strong line there by the Ferrari driver. Moving up through turns 12, we will ride on board with Alcinado as he gets ready to approach the line. As we approach 10 minutes left in this qualifying session. This is the Invictus Racing League Realistic Performance Division. This is Season 12, Round 9 action from Paul Ricard in France. My name is Keiran Wright, filling in for your normal commentator, Mr. Andrew Gatton, Mr. Goose himself, as Alcinado moves himself into P6. I am joined, as always, on a Thursday evening by the regular Realistic Performance co-commentator, Mr. Matt. And again, a good evening to you, Matt.
I don't think I've ever had a better introduction. Can I take you with me everywhere I go, just to be a hype man?
I'm sure we can work something out, mate.
Seems
like
majority
the next driver.
Oh, carry on, Keiran.
To set a time. Yeah, looks like I think next driver potentially to set a lap is probably going to be Thunderdome. I thought it may have been Danny, but Danny ran wide out of turn 4, so I think he's been that lap off. So Thunderdome in the Haas. We will jump into the broadcast view, just so you can get a couple more camera angles. You know what, Noodle? The connection didn't look too badly there for El Senado, so I think hopefully he's been able to fix a couple of the issues that he was having on Tuesday night in the F1 League. Had a little bit of a connection issue with El Senado there on Tuesday. But hopefully, looks to have fixed things now, as Thunderdome is now rounding the final corner here and is now going to start that long drive up to the line. What is Thunderdome going to be able to do in terms of a lap time as he crosses the line? 1:30, in fact, should have been a 1:36.5, but it looks like he has invalidated that lap time. So the lap time does not count, Matt.
Interestingly, whilst you were on board there, I'm on board with AC Oak here, who is currently sat P2. Who seems to be going very, very quickly through the first sector as he heads up to that DRS zone and the long back straight in sector 2. Seems to be an absolute flying lap for him, trying to push St Johnston all the way, who is also on a flying lap as well. So very interesting battle between them two.
Indeed. So we will quickly jump on board with AC Oakhill, as Matt did suggest. 1/10 up on his first sector time. Sorry, 2/10 up even. Looking very, very strong as he's coming around turn 10 into the long right-hander of turn 11 now. You really have to make sure that you don't run too tight on those lines, especially with the corner cutting stringency here at France being very, very strict. We have got a slow moving car, but that was just a car moving out of the way to enable AC Oakhill to continue his lap as we come around the final corner. Now this could be a very quick lap time. DRS open on that run up to the line now. AC Oakhill, is he going to be able to get faster than St Johnston? Yes, he can. 1:29.044 for the Red Bull of AC Oakhill. He does take provisional pole position with just over 7 minutes left in this session, Matt.
What a fantastic lap from him. St Johnston looked like he was on a flying lap there and decided to dive into the pits what looked like last minute. And whether that could be for a change of tyre to maybe fire back, or whether he's just going to leave it there and hold on to P2 is going to be very interesting to see, Keiran.
Indeed it shall. Also very interesting to see that with nearly 6.5 minutes left in this session, there are still a number of drivers yet to set fast laps, including current championship leader DJ Danny, who has now just set a lap time in, only enough for P8. A 1:36.33 from our championship leader DJ Danny. Very interesting to
Jamie
see.
29X is just coming round to the straight now on medium tyres, Keiran. It seems like quite a few of the grid have now switched to the medium tyres, and we'll see enough for him to take P7 in the pink racing point. So putting himself in a very good position there.
Yeah, 1:33.79, very strong lap there by Jamie in that racing point, as you say. We want to see if Mr. Sir Sharks is out on a hot lap. He is indeed on a hot lap, coming through sector 1 now, taking turns 4 and 5 before he moves up to that first DRS zone as we approach the final 5 minutes of this qualifying session. On those medium tyres, as Matt did mention, quite a few of these drivers now moving onto those medium tyres. Ooh, that was a very, very late move there by the racing point of, must have been Jamie 29X, leaving it very, very late to move out of the way of Sir Sharks there. Hopefully that's not hindered his lap too much. It doesn't look to have done so. 50.4 for that second sector, looking very, very strong as he sweeps through that long right-hander into the second long right-hander now at turn 10 into turn 11 up to the very tight braking zone for turn 12. Turns into a slightly sweeping corner as you do the final run up to the line through turns 13, 14 and finally 15. The last right-hander up to the DRS straight. DRS wide open and activated on that push up to the line. Sir Sharks 1:30.552, enough for P9.
Yes, a very, very good lap for him again on the medium tyres. I'm wondering, Keiran, if maybe track conditions suit the medium tyres better. Interestingly, as it seems to be over half the grid now opting for the medium tyre rather than the softs.
Quite possibly. What you will find with some of these drivers is they will look to set a bank lap on the soft tyre just so they can guarantee themselves a time on the board, then go out and set a slightly faster lap on those medium tyres to ensure that they're able to start the race on that medium compound, as that then opens up the door very much for a one-stop strategy. You are then able to run that one-stop strategy starting on those medium tyres. You can go with a medium tyre up till about laps 12 to 14 before you're required to put on those hard tyres. If you start on the softs, you are pretty much restricted to a two-stop strategy, which will of course make your race time just that little bit slower and could leave you stuck in traffic come the end of the race.
Interestingly, Keiran, just as you were explaining about the tyre situation, IRL Matt seems to be going very quickly on his first flying lap. I believe he's just gone purple through Sector 2 as he's going into Sector 3 here, so he could be a very, very fast lap from him in the McLaren.
Let's have a quick look on board with Matt as he goes to finish this lap, as Matt says, in that McLaren car. Taking the final corner now onto the final home straight. Hits that DRS zone with the wing wide open. For some reason, the camera's decided to move away from Matt, but moves back just in time to watch Matt set a 1:30.361, which is enough for P7 and makes him the highest running driver on those medium tyres.
It was an absolutely fantastic lap from him. If the pit strategies do come into play, I think he's put himself in one of the best positions he could have.
Indeed, he has. Very intelligent move there by Matt, just making sure that he's using as little tyre degradation as possible, purposely running himself wide there to ensure that he doesn't have to worry about additional tyre wear. As St Johnson comes into the pits again, looking like it was a pretty slow lap, so I think he's just decided he's going to throw that lap away, try and see if he can quickly get into his pit box and back out again before time runs out. As Sync Rayner has retired from the session, he has done all he thinks that he can do in that Haas car, currently down in P14. As you can see now, with 1 minute 40 seconds left in this qualifying session, a lot of drivers now coming out to do those out laps to try and see if they can get across that finish line before the time hits 0. Providing you have crossed the line before the time hits 0, your lap time will count, providing it is of course valid.
The championship leader, DJ Danny in the Williams, has just gone out to set what will be his last flying lap by the seams of it on the soft compounder tyres, so he's opting for what seems to be the second choice really in this qualifying session today, as he's just going through, just about to come down the back straight now in the DRS zone for Sector 2.
Indeed he is. We will definitely come back to DJ Danny towards the end of his lap. The Josh 32 is currently... where is the Josh? He is just deciding that he's going to cut those corners just a little bit to try to see if he can get back around in time to do another lap. I don't think he's going to have enough time to do a lap. So 1:29.275 is going to be enough for the Josh this evening. Quickly jump to AC Oku, who has started his flying lap. We have got a yellow flag in Sector 3. I don't think there's anything to be too concerned about there. Botch Gerbil with 10 seconds left on the clock starts his final flying lap. We will have a look at Light Shock on the run up to the line now in the only Falls and Horsepower car. Gets himself up to P13 and then he is knocked very quickly back down again by Raza as qualifying is over here in France. You see the guys with the checker flags next to their name. They have done all that they can this evening. DJ Danny ended up setting a 1:29.932. Not enough for Danny to improve on that 7th place he was in. Have a quick look at Thunderdome as he's moving up through Sector 3 now, through turns 13, 14, coming up to the final turn of turn 15. This is looking like a pretty decent lap here by Thunderdome. He should hopefully be able to improve on the time that he set as he comes up to the line, crosses the line, 1:29.700. That is enough for P5. Very, very good drive there by Thunderdome in that horse.
Just as you were on board with Thunderdome, the pole sitter AC Oakhill has just gone even quicker on the lap he set in that Red Bull. He's now dipped it to under 129 into the high 128. An absolutely fantastic lap time from him, just to make sure he is on pole for when those lights go out.
Indeed. Sir Sharks looks to be one of the last drivers to cross the line. P4 for Sir Sharks, 1:29.296. We'll quickly shoot down to Light Shock. Don't think Light Shock's going to look to set a faster lap time. No, 1:34 for Light Shock at the moment as he gets ready to cross the line. It's not going to be an improvement for Light Shock. And that brings us to the end of qualifying here at the circuit, Paul Ricard. And it's AC Oakhill in that Red Bull for the Brabham Racing Team, taking pole position with his teammate St Johnston in Brabham Racing on P2. It's a Brabham Racing front row lockout. Josh 32 in P3, Sir Sharks P4, Ice Cream, Thunderdome, Stallion, El Sonedo, DJ Danny, our championship leader, down in P9, starting on those soft tyres as well. He will have to two-stop. IRL Mats rounding out the top 10. Bots Gerbil finishing in P12 on the qualifying session, but of course we'll have that 5-second grid penalty, that 5-place grid penalty, sorry, and he will end up starting down in P17 at the back of the grid, where you can see the rest of the grid there.
It was an absolutely fantastic qualifying, but you were spot on. That 5-second grid penalty, that 5 grid place penalty, sorry, for Botch Gerbil has put him in a really difficult situation for the rest of the race. He's going to have to try and claw his way back through the field.
Indeed, he shall. It'll be very interesting to see whether Botch Gerbil, because he is so far back, decides to start on the hard tyre and tries to run what has been known to be a very, very risky, but can be done if done correctly, hard to soft strategy. Start on the slower compound of tyre, run that slower compound of tyre for as long as you possibly can. We predict it about lap 19 to 21 before you then chuck on those softs. Whilst the drivers are getting ready for the race and just setting out those final little pit strategies, I will take you very, very briefly through the Invictus weekly schedule. On a Monday evening, it is Gareth and Sab over on the YouTube channel, streaming the PlayStation F1 League. On a Tuesday night, it is Malc and Craig on the YouTube channel with the PlayStation F2, and it's myself and Dom the Noodle on the F1 side of things here on Twitch as the drivers start their formation lap now. I will quickly run through the rest of the stuff that we have, the rest of the commentary, the weekly streaming schedule that we have here in IRL. On a Wednesday night, there are 4 races to choose from, all streamed on the YouTube channel. You have the PlayStation F3 and F4 races streamed by Hoppers and Vojtech and Andriy respectively, and you have the PC F1 and F2 races streamed by JCol and Dan on the F1 side of things, and Geek and It's Fozzy on the F2. On a Thursday evening over on the YouTube channel, you have got the PlayStation Realistic Performance with Tim and Malc, and here on the YouTube channel it is normally the main man himself, Mr. Goose Andrew Gatton, teaming up with the man to my side now, Matt, here on Twitch. And that is your streaming schedule for Invictus. If you guys want to get involved in the conversation, it is over on Twitter at the at InvictusRL. Yeah, just give me 1 second, Dom. I will be getting the tyre compounds up for you, my friend.
I believe we may be going for a restart, unfortunately, Keiran.
That's what I'm thinking. It does look like we are getting a lobby reset. We are indeed. So you see the drivers just driving around now and just doing a little bit of a spin. We will wait for the next lobby invite from the league admins, which also now gives me a chance to go over the socials. If you want to get involved in the conversation, as I said, it is over on Twitter at InvictusRL_Xbox. If you guys want to get involved in the Xbox conversation, the main Invictus League Twitter account is InvictusRL. The Instagram is at Invictus Racing League. YouTube channel, youtube.com/InvictusRL. And if you want to get involved and potentially race for the Invictus Racing League, InvictusRacingLeague.com is the place to go. So we will just wait for a few moments, guys, whilst we get the lobby restarted and get the invites from the league admins. So just bear with us for just a few moments. And I can now take a breath.
It was a fantastic qualifying session, though, Keiran. It's very interesting to see the pace of each driver, and I think we could be in for a very, very close race between the top. I believe between first and sixth was separated by less than a second in qualifying.
Indeed, it should make for a very, very interesting race, especially when you take into account the fact that championship leader DJ Danny is down in P9.
Yes.
So he's got a lot of work to do if he is going to try and get some very, very strong points here in the realistic performance. What I do quickly want to mention for any of the viewers watching, if this is your first time watching realistic performance racing here at Invictus, the points system here in IRL is done ever so slightly differently to what is done in the actual F1 world. Here at IRL, we try and promote our drivers to finish the race. So, all drivers, providing they finish the race, will gain a point of some kind. The league gives points from first place, which is 25 points, all the way down to 1 point for the driver that finishes in 20th place. Of course, we have only got 17 drivers with this evening. As a result, P17 will get themselves 4 points when they cross that finish line. If you finish in the top 10, you will of course get a point for the fastest lap as well, just like in the normal F1 world. Just waiting for the invites to come through from the league admins. Do apologise for the slight delay, ladies and gents, but hopefully we will get the racing up and running here on the Xbox Realistic Performance as soon as we possibly can.
Technology never works when you need it.
Indeed it does not. Technology is our friend and at the same time our worst enemy. There is the invite that we were looking for. So we will get ourselves back into the lobby now and we will be able to get ourselves underway for this racing session. I am in. You can see the drivers now just selecting their cars. We have got Matty in here as well. We've got all the important people that need to be in here.
It was interesting, Keiran. Me and you were discussing before the race about the straights on this track, how it could be very, very difficult as the race goes on to get the overtakes done with the DRS train and the slipstream. So I think for anybody starting on the back of the grid, if they don't get their moves done early, it could be very difficult for them today.
Indeed it shall. As Matty did mention, you have got a lot of straights here in France, which will of course lead for a lot of slipstreaming on those, and people, especially on those faster tyres, if they do decide to risk those soft tyres. Of course the guys in the top 9 have to start on those soft tyres. We'll definitely look to try and utilise the slipstream available to them down those DRS straights to try and get as big a lead as they can, as quickly as they can, so it doesn't hinder their race too much going forward towards the pit stop phase. So we're just waiting for the last few drivers to get themselves in and settled. We have got myself and Matty here as well. We have all 17 drivers, just waiting for the all clear from race control for these drivers to start readying up, and then we will hopefully be able to get the racing underway here in the Invictus Racing League Realistic Performance Division, Season 12, Round number 9. This is of course a 12 race season. We have only got 3 races left after this race here in France. Next week on Thursday for the realistic performance, it should hopefully be the main man Andrew back, replacing me, doing what should be done and commentating in the correct way when Andrew and Matty head over to China for the Chinese Grand Prix. We've then got a race at the Circuit de Barcelona Catalunya in 2 weeks' time before we finish the season in 3 weeks' time at the end of April at the Marina Bay Circuit in Singapore, which should make for an absolutely fantastic final race of the season, Matt.
Especially with how close the championship is at the moment, it could come down to the last few, especially to the last few laps in the Singapore Grand Prix. But I think Andrew is probably going to be sat there a bit worried about if his job's going to be safe for those 2 last races with the amazing job you're doing, mate.
Nah, wouldn't dare take that spot away from Andrew. This is most definitely Andrew's spot. I'm quite content on that equal performance side on a Tuesday night with my main man Dom the Noodle. So just having a little bit of delay here, guys, just making sure that all the drivers are ready and are set up. Should hopefully get the all clear from race control very, very shortly, that we can start readying up and getting ready to go racing. And just as we said, St Johnston is getting himself ready, just waiting for the race controllers in Jamie 29X and or IRL Mats and Fair Moto. Fair Moto has readied up. So you see 4 drivers have now started to ready up. 6, 7 drivers have readied up, which means we are now going to start getting the countdown for the start of this session. We will of course have another formation lap, and then we will get into 27 laps of racing around the circuit Paul Ricard here in La Castellet in France.
And I believe we are getting ready to start. Green lights in the chat for everybody to ready up.
That's what we like to see. Of course, we have got Matty in the realistic performance drivers area, so he is able to get all of the information from the race admins. So we're loading into the session now, guys. This will just load straight onto the grid, so the drivers are able to put their setups on, sort out their strategies, and then ready up. We will then get our formation lap, and from that formation lap we will go racing in the French Grand Prix. So what I will do is once we get into the session, I will let Matty talk for just a little bit, as I feel like I am taking the limelight off him just that little bit too much. I mean, this is Matty's race, this is Matty's league. After all, I'm just here as a guest commentator for today. So I will get everything ready on the streaming side of things, and we will let the wonderful dulcet tones of Matty take you through the preparation and the formation lap here in France.
You just put me completely on the spot there, bud. Hopefully it won't be too much longer, and then everybody will be on the grid ready to go. I believe we are just waiting for one more driver, I believe, and then hopefully the formation lap will get underway shortly.
That is fantastic. Right, what I will then quickly do, whilst we are waiting for the drivers to just sort out their setups, quickly run you through the teams, because it is slightly different here in IRL. The drivers who may be driving the same car on the grid may not necessarily be in the same team in terms of the constructors' standings. So we have the Pit Stop Boys team of IRL Mats 21 and Jamie 29X. The Hotshot Racing team of our championship leader DJ Danny and his partner in crime, Fair Moto. We have the Shark Nipples F1 team of James F1, ETC and Sir Sharks. Only Fools and Horsepower are represented by Lightshock 16 and Thunderdome. The W7 team are Stallion W7 and Raza 410. On to Botch Gerbil and the Josh 32 in the Viper Motorsports team. The Brabham Racing team have locked out the front row here in France. It is AC Oakhill and St Johnston. And then we have three teams who are only represented by one driver. They are the Wells F1 team, represented by El Cernedo. Pain in the Rain, which is being represented by Sink Rainer. And the Coconut Water F1 team, which is being represented by Ice Cream. So when you see cars battling on the grid and in the race this evening, ladies and gentlemen, don't think that they are actually on the same constructors team, because that may not necessarily be the case. So we'll take our constructors championship leaders for example. DJ Danny, as current championship leader in the driver standings, has got the slowest car on the grid. So he is in the Williams racing car. And his teammate Fairmoto is a little bit further down the grid, so is driving in the Renault this evening. So the drivers are in different cars in the race, but in terms of the constructors' standings, are very much working together to gain as many points as they possibly can over these next few races.
With Brabham Racing obviously locking out the front grid with a 1-2, it's going to be very interesting to see if there is any strategy at play between those guys going into the first corner, because the last thing they're going to want is to make contact. So it'll be very interesting to see how those boys handle the start and whether they can get through cleanly, and then see if they'll work together in the race or whether the battle will commence.
Indeed. I mean, from a driver's point of view, I'm probably not as good as some of these guys that are on track, but I do partake in a little bit of racing myself. But I can definitely see where you are coming from there, Matty. You don't want to hit your teammate as you are coming up to turn 1. Let's get those tyres up on screen. You can see that the top 9 drivers all starting on those soft tyres. And interesting, Botch Gerbil, with his 5-place grid penalty, is only starting on those medium tyres. Only 2 people on those hards. Lightshock 16 is one of them, along with Sink Rainer. As you can see, the predicted pit stop strategy there on the screen.
It's going to be very interesting to see the different strategies at play here, to see if Lightshock and Sink Rainer can obviously work their way from those positions. Interestingly, Botch Gerbil is down in 17th.
So that would have been the 5-place grid drop that Botch Gerbil had to serve following his collision that he had with St Johnston in qualifying. Despite him qualifying in P12 during the qualifying session, he did have that 5-place grid penalty that he did have to serve in preparation for this race, which is what has moved him down to P17. So these guys in the top 9 that are all on the soft tyres, expect these guys to do a 2-stop strategy. Most of them will come in fact the majority of them will come in between laps 5 and 7, but it'll be interesting to see which way they go. If they decide to put on another set of soft tyres, they could run a soft medium strategy, which will mean they'll be coming back in again on lap 14 to 16 for a set of mediums. Or if they were going to go soft medium soft, they would box between laps 5 and 7 for a set of medium tyres and take them up to about lap 18 to 20, and then from there we'll run another set of soft tyres through to the end of the race. So we are now riding with AC Oakhill as he takes the final corner and prepares to get himself back into his grid slot here at the French Grand Prix for the Invictus Racing League Realistic Performance Division. My name is Keiran Wright 92, filling in for Andrew Gatton this evening, and I am joined as always by the regular Realistic Performance co-commentator Matty.
I'm certainly looking
are lining up on the grid.
I'm certainly looking forward to this race now after such a fantastic qualifying. As the last cars are just lining up on the grid, we will finally be able to get this race underway.
Here we go. 5 red lights are lining up and are out, and we are racing here in France in the Invictus Racing League. And I will say, guys, just ignore what you're seeing on the left hand side of the screen. A couple of cars have ghosted early on. There was a little bit of a slip and slide there. One of the cars has gone off. I think it was potentially Ice Cream. There is definitely damage there as well, with Raza 410 in the Alpha Tauri. Maybe a little bit of collision going through the first
some contact
corners.
coming out of turn 1 between those drivers there, unfortunately.
Indeed. So we will have a quick look at our championship leader, DJ Danny, up in P11 at the moment. Has had a little bit of a drop from the line and was overtaken by a number of drivers off of the start there. Not the best start there from our championship leader in that Williams on those soft tyres. The last thing you want to be doing, especially when you are on the soft tyres, is falling down positions at the start. You see a long train of cars here. You will see these cars are getting very close to each other for the first lap or two, and then the pace will start coming out of these cars.
Just looking on those two cars, Thunderdome and Ice Cream, that had the collision at the front, it looks like Thunderdome may have some slight wing damage on his end plate, unfortunately for him. Looks like both cars are actually suffering with front wing damage, so we may have to see an early pit from both of those guys, which could put a real dampener down their race.
Indeed it will. It will probably result in them having to change their strategies onto a two-stop. As you can see, Thunderdome has now jumped into the pits. We would expect Ice Cream to do something similar. You are seeing blue flags being waved. That is just a cosmetic glitch on the game. Ice Cream has in fact decided that he's going to be unable to finish this race and has retired in the pit lane. Thunderdome moving on to a set of medium tyres and will have a very tough job to try and see if he can catch himself back up to the rest of this pack as they are coming down the first DRS straight. We have had our first penalty on lap number 2, the Josh 32 in the McLaren, picking up the first 3-second time penalty of this evening's race. But AC Oakhill and St Johnston, the Brabham Racing team, still leading the way here in France.
We've unfortunately lost a driver as well, unfortunately, so we are down to 16 runners, which is a shame, as Fair Moto is definitely pushing to try and get past James F1, as St Johnston's just picked up a 3-second time penalty or multiple warnings, so that throws the podium positions into a real jeopardy there.
Indeed they do. We will have a quick look at Fair Moto, trying to see if he can hunt down James F1 ETC, who is in that Alfa Romeo this evening. So he has got a little bit of a pace advantage there. The Josh 32 putting in a fastest lap of the race, 1:33.236. Is Fair Moto going to be able to make a move on James F1 into turn 1? Decides against it. Gets very close to the back end of that Alfa Romeo though, as the race stewards have now enabled DRS. Is Fair Moto going to go around for a move around the outside of Jay? He does. What a move by Fair Moto into turn 3. Goes around the outside of the Alfa Romeo car there. Moves himself up into P9. Fantastic move there by that Renault driver, and he will now start hunting down IRL Mats in the McLaren, who is having a little bit of a battle himself with El Senado, and he has got himself in front of El Senado there. El Senado will look to try and see if he can fight back under the second part of this straight. IRL Mats now trying to see if he can make a move on Jamie29X, who is of course his teammate in the Pit Stop Boys team, so going to be extra careful not to damage his teammate's race in any way, but not close enough yet.
Interestingly, whilst you've been watching that battle going on, AC Oakhill has been able to crucially get out of DRS range already from St Johnston, who is actually under pressure from the Josh 32. Fantastic race between those two. The Josh 32 and the McLaren pushing very, very hard to try and get an early overtake so he can chase down the leader. But it seems to be playing straight into AC Oakhill's hands.
Indeed, the longer the Josh 32 is stuck behind St Johnston, who, bear in mind, is AC Oakhill's teammate in the Constructors' Championship, the longer St Johnston can stay in front of the Josh and hold him up just that little bit, the easier it's going to be for AC Oakhill to be able to build that gap and, most crucially, maintain, hopefully, that P1 come the first set of pit stops, which is quite unlikely with the number of drivers that we have got on the medium tyre. But of course, once the medium runners hit their pit stops as well, you could see a very, very good undercut. The undercut here in France is very, very strong, where a driver will potentially pit earlier than the cars around them in the hope that when the cars around them pit, they are caught up in traffic, so they are able to make a move on those drivers.
Fair Moto is absolutely flying through the field. He's not long got past Alcinado and has opened up a gap to him, but is now chasing down IRL Mats in the McLaren and is starting to put pressure on there. So Fair Moto seems to have some real pace in that Renault today, coming back from further down the grid.
He is indeed definitely finding some pace out of that Renault that maybe some of the drivers aren't able to do yet, as St Johnston has come into the pits very, very early on here. Raza gets a 5-second time penalty for speeding in the pit lane. I will let Matty just have a quick look at St Johnston. In fact, Raza has retired from the race in the pit lane. We have got a yellow flag in sector 3, but that shouldn't affect anything too much, as we have got Raza in the pits as he has retired from there.
It looks to be a tactical strategy there from St Johnston, as there wasn't a front wing change. He's actually gone onto the medium tyres, so I assume there was no damage, so he's going for quite a big undercut there.
He is indeed. Lap 5 is where we would look to see some of those soft runners make those first pit stops. As DJ Danny barges his way through El Senado there, following James F1 ETC, making that overtake on El Senado as well. Senado dropping down to P10, James F1 up into P8, DJ Danny just behind him in P9.
El Senado
drops again.
Yes, Botch Gerbil, who had that grid penalty, has just got past him, but interestingly, the leader, AC Oakhill, has just got a time penalty, 3-second time penalty there for multiple warnings. So that's now 2 of the front 3 drivers, all with time penalties.
Indeed it is. We will have a quick look at the man who has been going very, very fast in the start of this race in Fair Moto, trying to see if he can hunt down IRL Matt in the McLaren. Not close enough to be able to get to him yet, as El Senado has also retired in the pit lane. Massive little slide there from Fair Moto. That's not going to help his tyres too much. With these tyres being 6 laps old, it shouldn't affect him too much. But if he does that a few too many times, that is going to really start to wear down those tyres and will result in him having to change his strategy and pit a little bit earlier than he may have particularly wanted.
He's certainly been pushing right from the beginning, and another driver that is pushing is the Haas of St Rayner, who is on the hard tyres. He's chasing down Lightshock, who is in the Williams. I'm not sure if he's made a move. He's going up the inside there, around the outside, sorry. Wheel-to-wheel racing between Lightshock and St Rayner there. Fantastic racing from those guys.
Indeed, St Rayner not close. It's on the second part of the straight, so no DRS on that second part of the straight. We have got a yellow flag in sector 1. I think that was possibly just the retired car from El Senado.
I believe it was Keiran, yes.
Just running the pit stop as the Josh and Sir Sharks and Stallion all coming into the pits now. Interesting that AC Oakhill has decided to stay out on those soft tyres. Maybe not suffering with tyre wear as much as the cars around him. but this does help AC Oakhill push out a bit more of a lead.
It's a very interesting strategy from AC Oakhill there. It'd be interesting to see what tyres he's going to go on to next.
Indeed, I would assume that he's probably going to look to go onto the medium tyres, match everyone else that is currently in and around him, to enable him to use those soft tyres towards the end of the race. I am looking at AC Oakhill's car here on and on board. His tyres don't look to be too worn. You can't see any of the cord there. So he looks to be managing these tyres very, very well, is the Brabham Racing driver of AC Oakhill in the Red Bull here.
Stallion in the Renault in P13 has just picked up a time penalty for multiple warnings again. So that's a 3-second time penalty for him.
Indeed, and I have just seen on the leaderboard, Sync Rainer has finally made that move on Lightshock, moves himself up into P8. He has been able to overtake that Williams car of Lightshock, but Lightshock will come back. I know Lightshock personally. He is a very, very fast driver and is a very competitive driver. As the leader, AC Oakhill, pops into the pits from the lead, it's not going to be enough for him to be able to maintain that lead. Jamie 29X coming up the main straight now. Massive bit of oversteer there from Fair Motor on the X15. As I thought, AC Oakhill has moved himself onto those medium tyres as DJ Danny also pits from P4. Falling down the grid, we'll expect to see Danny put on those medium tyres. Just looking to see what happens. There it is. Those medium tyres have indeed been put on by DJ Danny. Botch Gerbil here in the Alfa Romeo, getting close to James F1 ETC, who of course tonight is also driving in the Alfa Romeo. But in the Realistic Performance League, that does not mean they are teammates. James F1 ETC, a driver for the Shark Nipples F1 team, and Botch Gerbil is part of Viper Motorsport. So this is very much a battle, not only for position, but for that extra few constructors points, as well as Thunderdome picks up a 3-second time penalty. We will very, very briefly have a look at the penalties. 5 drivers so far with penalties: AC Oakhill, St Johnston, the Josh 32, Stallion W7, and Thunderdome. The most important thing to look at here, I'm not sure whether you've noticed it, Matty, AC Oakhill out ahead of St Johnston following those pits. So that undercut from St Johnston hasn't worked.
No, it was a very, very bold strategy, as he's just picked up another 3-second time penalty there, trying to defend from the Josh 32. So I believe that is now 2 penalties for St Johnston, which is going to affect the end result of the race. I was actually just on board with Botch Gerbil, who seems to be pushing very, very hard in that Alfa Romeo on the hard tyres, as he's closed the gap down to James F1. So a pretty disastrous qualifying session from him that saw him starting last on the grid. He seems to be pushing up. We will obviously see when he pits whether he can maintain that position, of course. But it's a fantastic start from him.
And in fact, to be fair, all of the people who have started on those hard tyres have got off to a very good start. So Botch Gerbil obviously starting from the back of the grid on those mediums, but Sync Rainer was also down in P14. He started on those hard tyres, currently up into P6, but is under a little bit of pressure from Lightshock, who has got that DRS rear wing open. Is he going to get close enough to Sync Rainer to be able to make a move on the Haas driver? He is not, but he may possibly be able to come back and get past Sync Rainer, get payback on Sync Rainer, making that move on him a couple of laps ago. And if these two work well, if these two work together, they could actually get themselves onto the back of the Botch Gerbil James F1 battle as well, and that could make it a 4-car battle, and we could potentially get our first sightings of a DRS train this evening.
I think we've all been waiting for. It's definitely going to be coming soon. The Josh 32 is again closing right up to St Johnston there, which is going to be inviting Sir Sharks behind to push hard on those medium tyres. It's a very good battle between those two. DJ Danny, obviously the championship leader, is down into P13. He seems to be pushing very hard and gaining time to Stallion in the Renault. So a big push coming from him as well. The Botch
Yeah,
Gerbil and James F1 wheel to wheel here as they go round the chicane. Fantastic racing from those two, both in the Alfa Romeo car, of course.
They're getting very, very close to each other there through that first sector. James F1 gets the better of that little mini battle. Of course, Botch Gerbil is going to come. He is going to come back at him here with DRS. Is he going to be able to maintain, or is he going to be able to close that gap to James again? Both drivers probably utilising as much of the ERS available to them as they can. That overtake mode giving them that extra boost of power. St Johnston and the Josh also having a little battle a little further on down the grid. Going side by side up to turn 10. It is the Josh on the inside of St Johnston. Makes that move work. The Josh 32 gets himself up into P9. Very, very good move there by that McLaren driver.
Fantastic racing from them. Absolutely brilliant. And to make no contact as well was fantastic. As Fair Moto seems to be trying to push again from P2. IRL Mats is sticking to him in the McLaren, but it seems to be that Fair Moto still got that speed, even on 10 lap old tyres, to maintain that gap from IRL Mats.
Indeed, AC O'Kill, the man who started on pole, looking to make a move down the inside of Sync Rainer into turn 1. Sync Rainer just gets that Haas in front of the Red Bull, but AC O'Kill is going to come back now. I think the drivers got a little bit too close to each other there. AC O'Kill just putting a hand out there going, get yourself away from me. You're a little bit too close to me, son. I don't like how close you're getting to me. You need to move yourself to the side. Which is exactly what Sync Rainer ended up doing as AC O'Kill moves himself up into P6.
Light Shock is under a lot of pressure here from the Josh 32 in the DRS zone. They have all got DRS, of course, coming down that straight, as there is just a swarm of cars. It's going to be very interesting to see who gets the advantage coming out of these corners.
I was so happy I turned to the view of the Josh 32 then as the drivers were coming down the straight there in the DRS zone. You just see about 6 or 7 drivers all with their rear wings open driving towards one another. It did make for a very, very good shot, and as Matt says, the Josh 32 getting very, very close.
It just proves how difficult these drivers are going to find it overtaken on the straights when you've all got DRS.
Indeed, a DRS train is not fun to get yourself into. It's even worse when you're at the head of it, like Sync Rainer is going to be at the moment. Sync Rainer outside of DRS range from AC Oakhill, which means he's going to be a sitting duck for the Josh 32 in the McLaren, who makes that move stick and moves himself up into P6 here at the French Grand Prix. AC Oakhill getting himself into a little bit of a battle here now with James F1 ETC. James has got a different driver in his rear view now. It was Botch Gerbil, but he has dove into the pits and put himself onto those hard tyres. That will now pretty much run Botch Gerbil till the end of the race. He won't have to worry about coming back into the pits as AC Oakhill in the more powerful Red Bull here. ERS mode, full Rich Mix 3 DRS open, makes that move very, very easily on James F1 in that Alfa Romeo. Just use that little bit of overtake just to see if he can maintain the gap.
Just in front of them, IRL Max has finally got past Fair Moto. It was a fantastic battle between them two. So both haven't pitted, of course, on the medium tyres, 11 laps old. But Fair Moto seems to be losing a little bit of that pace now. So it'll be interesting to see when he decides to dive in and change his tyres.
Indeed, Fair Moto getting a little bit close to the back of IRL Mats. They're going into the final corner, but not enough. Mats is able to maintain a nice, healthy lead there as Jamie 29X, the previous race leader, comes into the pits along with James F1 ETC. Jamie putting on those hard tyres. I would expect to see James F1 do the same thing. That will then be those guys set to the end of the race. We will just jump back onto the Haas of Sync Rainer, who is trying to hunt down St Johnston in that racing point. Currently 6/10 is the gap between the two cars, so Sync Rainer inside that DRS zone, or that DRS range I should say, sorry, as they come through turn 6. That line that you've just seen Sync Rainer drive through was the DRS detection point. Is he going to be close enough? I don't think he is. I think St Johnstone is going to live to fight another day in P5 here at the French Grand Prix, as Thunderdome picks up another 3-second time penalty. We will again just have a quick look. We'll have a quick look at the fastest lap. Fastest lap currently held by the Josh 32 in P4, a 1:33.236. As we look at the penalties, AC Hokil and the Josh both with 3 seconds, St Johnstone with 6 seconds, Stallion with 3 seconds, and Thunderdome also with 6 seconds worth of penalties. As Fairmoto does now dive into the pits, and we would assume that it's going to be those hard tyres.
It is definitely going on to the hard tyres for him, as Surshaks has just picked up a 3 seconds time penalty as well for multiple warnings. Surshaks in that midfield battle, of course, with Jamie 29X and Stallion, so it could be very, very bad for him in that sense, in that battle.
Indeed it shall. So we are looking at the Williams of Lightshock here. 0.8 seconds behind Sync Rainer here. He will obviously get DRS, but I don't think he's going to be close enough to make a move yet. Probably just look to try and see if he can set up Sync Rainer. As I say, Lightshock is a very, very intelligent driver. He knows what he is doing when it comes to a Formula 1 game. So he will very much have the next few laps in his mind, thinking, when am I going to make my move? Do I try and undercut Sync Rainer? Because you have to remember, guys, neither of these guys have pitted. They both started on those hard tyres, so do still need to make their mandatory pit stop onto that medium, or so they choose soft tyre.
IRL Mats, who's out in the lead, still hasn't pitted as well. He's still on the medium tyres. They're 13 laps old, as he's actually just diving into the pits now, as I mentioned that. I believe he might be going on to the hard tyre as well, which will put AC Oakhill back into the lead on those medium tyres. But he is coming under pressure from the Josh 32, who's just had a little lock-up as I've gone on to him, but he seems to be closing that gap to AC Oakhill quite quickly.
Indeed, as you see on screen there, AC Oakhill does now take the lead of the race once again. Re-inherits the lead in this race following IRL Mats coming into the pits. And as I thought, Lightshock has come into the pits. This could well be Lightshock attempting to undercut Sync Rainer here. He has put those medium tyres on, which is what I thought he was going to do. It's a little bit too early to try and go for that risky strategy onto that soft tyre. So now all eyes will be on Sync Rainer, currently up in P4, to see whether he is able to pit and get back out before that Williams comes down that main straight.
Thunderdome's just come into the pits as well, as Stallion's picked up another 3-second time penalty in P7. Thunderdome, who is currently down in 14th, has come in and come onto the hard tyres. So he's now going to start trying to chase down Lightshock, who is on fresh mediums as well.
Indeed he shall. We will have a quick look at Fairmoto in P8. Trying to see if he can get a little bit closer to Stallion, who of course is driving in the Renault with him in this race, but neither are teammates with each other. Fairmoto has had a very, very strong race. Was acting as a man possessed at the start of the race, Matty, with the amount of overtakes he was making.
He seemed
very early
to fly through. It seemed to fly through so many cars in front of him. It was an unbelievable start for him.
Indeed, as St Johnstone and Sync Rainer both come into the pits, it'll be interesting to see what happens now. We will have a look at Lightshock. I want to watch and see whether Lightshock is able to get himself out before Sync Rainer leaves those pits. Sync Rainer moving himself onto those medium tyres too. Has Lightshock been able to make the undercut work?
It's going to
getting
be
very close. He has just got ahead of Sync Rainer. Very, very close. But Light Shock makes that undercut work. He has gained that position on Sync Rainer.
Another battle that seems to be non-stop throughout this whole race is the two Alfa Romeos of Botch Gerbil and James F1. James F1 is closing the gap, but Botch Gerbil just seems to be defending every time James F1 gets close to him. It's definitely a battle to watch.
Indeed, I've been having a quick look at the battle between Sir Sharks and Jamie 29X. They were very, very close to one another as they were going up the DRS straight. Jamie has run wide though there into turn 11. Hasn't really left the door open too much for Sir Sharks to be able to make a move as we are about to start lap 17 here as the Josh 32 comes into the pits on 9-lap old medium tyres as Sir Sharks does the same. AC Oko is now going to be able to push even more and gain an even larger lead over those cars behind him as we are on lap 17 here in France. 11 laps left of this race. AC Oakhill is leading, the man who started this race on pole for the Brabham Racing team in the Red Bull this evening, maintaining the lead that he has. Currently just about 9 seconds ahead of Jamie 29X, who is driving in the Racing Point car for the Pit Stop Boys, with the Hotshot Racing car of Fairmoto in the Renault in third. Over to you, Matt.
Both those drivers that pitted her, Sir Sharks has just gone onto the medium tyres. Interestingly, I'm assuming they are going to try and push as aggressively as they can to get back up through the field. The Josh 32 is now currently trying to overtake DJ Danny, and he's made the move stick. Fantastic move for him, putting those medium tyres to very good effect. As James F1, Botch Gerbil and James F1 are neck and neck, wheel to wheel, again battling down here. Fantastic battle between those two drivers in the Alfa Romeos.
Indeed, we will quickly jump on board with Botch Gerbil to see if he can make a move on James F1. St Johnston just ahead of them as well in P8, but Botch Gerbil will also very much be looking in his mirrors because he will be able to see a very fast Williams shaped car by the name of Light Shock 16, but Light Shock looks to have lost a little bit of control of the car there going through turn 12. Light Shock has unfortunately dropped a position to Sync Rainer. All that hard work that Light Shock did to be able to get himself ahead of Sync Rainer in those pit stops, unfortunately not helping him too much as St Johnston puts in the fastest lap of the race for the Brabham Racing team.
AC Oakhill has just come out of the pits and is wheel to wheel with the Josh 32. The race leaders pitted for fresh mediums as the Josh 32 locks up. They've been battling since the pit lane as AC Oakhill forces the Josh 32 wide. It's a fantastic battle from the moment AC Oakhill left the pit exit. He was wheel to wheel with the Josh 32 who's trying to make another move on him here. Fantastic battle between those two.
Indeed, just as you said, those two were having a battle. We did very, very quickly jump on. But the interesting thing to look at in terms of the Josh 32, when you look at his telemetry, he has got a yellow warning light for fuel, which means he is currently underfueled. So as it stands, he currently does not have enough fuel in that car to last until the end of the race, which means that the Josh 32 will have to try and see if he can save just that little bit of fuel. You'll probably see that he does put the car into fuel mix 1 whilst he's going through these bendy, twisty turny corners, because you don't need that much fuel pumping through the car. It is a very, very good way for drivers to be able to save fuel during a race. We will quickly go on to AC Oakhill's viewpoint now as we are coming down the main straight on lap 19 here in the French Grand Prix in the Invictus Racing League Realistic Performance Division. My name is Keiran Wright 92, filling in for Andrew Gatton this evening, joined by the regular Realistic Performance co-commentator Matty. We are witnessing an absolutely fantastic race here. Battles everywhere on this grid, and as I say, battles everywhere on this grid. We will jump down to Sync Rainer in P11, who is hunting down the two Alfa Romeos of Botched, Gerbil and James F1. Gets a very, very good exit there out of turn 7. Makes that move look very, very easy around that first Alfa Romeo of Botched Gerbil. Is he going to be able to make a second move work on James F1 though? He has a lot of ERS in reserve. He's going to open up that overtake. Is he going to be able to close up to James F1? I think James is just going to be able to hold it from Sync Rainer. James does hold it for now. Sync Rainer having another little look on those medium tyres into turn 11. Can't make the move yet, but will he try to do it into the braking zone of turn 12? It's a very, very risky move to do it there. Does not do it. Decides that discretion is the better part of valor here, and will just sit behind James F1, maintaining that 1 second gap, or that less than 1 second gap, sorry, to enable him to get DRS on the main straight, which he's going to get now. DRS open, ERS open, fuel mix 3 more than likely, as Sync Rainer makes that move a little bit later than he wanted to, but he is now ahead of both of those Alfa Romeo drivers and is now in P9.
It's interesting, that battle going on between the two Alfa Romeo drivers and Sync Rainer is inviting Surfsharks, who started pushing in the AlphaTauri, to catch up to that battle and is now within DRS zone of them, and he's very quickly, him and Lightshock are getting onto the back of them, so that could be two drivers to watch out for, taking those positions towards the end of the race, as both drivers have got quite a bit of ERS left to use up, of course, in that DRS slipstream battle.
Indeed, we will quickly jump to the head of the race here with AC Oakkill battling still with the Josh 32, the Red Bull of AC Oakkill, the man who started this race on pole position for the Brabham Racing Team, with the Josh 32, who is a driver for Viper Motorsports. Josh's teammate in a battle of his own. Josh's teammate is Botched Gerbil, so he is stuck in that massive battle involving Sync Rainer, James F1, Surfsharks and Lightshock, as the Josh locks up his left tyres and again locks up his rights going into the final corner. This is going to invite AC Oakkill onto him as we go up the main straight here, as the drivers start lap 21 here in France. Is AC Oakkill going to make a move into turn 1? Decides against it, has a little look, decides that it's not going to be the best move for him. DJ Danny dropping into the pits on those 12 lap old medium tyres, down in 13th place. I'm wondering whether DJ Danny is about to put on a set of soft tyres. He is indeed. He has put those soft tyres on, which means DJ Danny is going to look very, very dangerous towards the end of this race. Now, all of the drivers around him are going to be on slightly worn tyres. We will still keep an eye on this battle between AC Oakkill and the Josh 32. The Josh is able to keep that gap over AC Oakkill, as Surfsharks has made a move on Botched Gerbil up into P10. Just noticed that on the timing screens. Botched Gerbil now again with that Williams shaped car of Lightshock getting very, very close to his rear end. We have got this train of 5 cars here. The DRS train that myself and Matty were begging for has finally turned up. We've got our DRS train. If you had DRS train on your bingo card, you're able to tick that off for this race, ladies and gentlemen. You've got what you needed.
Interestingly, it took a little bit of ERS usage for that overtake to be made. I think that between this battle of about 4 or 5 cars, I believe it might be 5 cars, I think that's what it could come down to if these drivers are so close, every single one of the back 4 getting DRS off each other. As again, Surfsharks coming around the outside has just overtook James F1 as well, with a fantastic move from him. So he's now up into P9 and chasing down Sync Rainer, but Lightshock has just picked up a 3-second time penalty. Interestingly, for multiple warnings, as well as he's become under pressure from he's become under pressure trying to take Botched Gerbil.
Indeed, we will have a quick look at that Williams, who is at the back of this DRS train is he going to be able to try and make a move on Botched Gerbil? A little bit slidey as he comes out of the corner. This is the bad side of a DRS train. You may well have DRS on the car ahead of you, but of course he has it on the car ahead of him as Lightshock looks for the move on the inside of Botched Gerbil, and he does eventually, at the end of that chicane, make that move stick. Lightshock moving himself up into P11, and now the hunt begins for the other Alfa Romeo of James F1 ETC.
Stallions in the Renault seems to be pushing very hard to try and catch IRL Max. Here, Stallion has of course got within DRS range of him, trying to close that gap up to make an attack, and he seems to be getting closer and closer with every lap. I think it's just going to come down to whether he has got enough time to catch him there for P3.
I think we will have a go and have a quick look at that battle that Manny was just talking about. Stallion versus IRL Max, the Renault versus the McLaren. IRL Max running a very, very nice line out there through turn 7. Stallion pretty much copying it as we come onto the DRS straight. Stallion is not going to be close enough to do any real damage as DJ Danny sets the fastest lap of the race, a 1:32.2. I don't think though it's going to be enough for DJ Danny to be able to catch up to anyone else. He is still 15 seconds behind Botched Gerbil. There are only 5 laps left of this French Grand Prix.
AC Okio here is closing the gap up to the Josh 32. This battle has been non-stop since AC Okio came out of the pits on those medium tyres all those laps ago. This battle has been non-stop. He still hasn't been able to find a way round AC Okio. The Josh 32, but he is getting very, very close to him. So we should be expecting a move from him in the next few laps if he can find the speed.
Indeed, the car's coming up through the final 2 corners now. AC Okio will more than likely look to try and make a move on the main straight here. We will ride on board with the TV pod of AC Okio in the Red Bull. Is he going to be able to get close enough to the Josh 32? The Josh 32 with that rich mix on his car, that rich fuel mix. Lock up by the Josh 32 into turn 1, closing that gap even more to AC Okio. AC Okio unable to make that move work at the moment. Lock up again by the Josh 32s, really locking up these tyres here, inviting AC Okio onto his rear wing as the cars come through at turn 6. There is your detection point for DRS round turn 7. A very, very strong exit there by AC Okio. Is he going to be able to make a move on the Josh 32 into the chicanes of 8, 9 and 10? He goes to the inside. Little bit of contact on the rear wheel of the Josh, and he has spun the car. AC Okio has lost control of his car, unfortunately, and has been overtaken by his teammate St. Johnston. And I think that's going to put an end to that battle, unfortunately.
Look, for AC Okio, he doesn't seem to have any damage that I can see. So that is probably the only save of grace for him there. As you were watching that, and Lightshock has just got past James F1. But James F1 is starting to fight back. This battle's still ongoing between these cars, but it seems that St. Rainer may have been able to gain a little bit of distance from Lightshock, enough to hold down P9 as he's gone in pursuit of Surshart in the AlphaTauri.
It has indeed. 2.3 seconds is the gap between Lightshock and St. Rainer. We are on board with Botched Gerbil, who's getting very, very close to James F1 at the end of that battle. That battle between James F1 and Lightshock has enabled Botched Gerbil to get onto the back of that Alfa Romeo again. These two have had a battle all the way through this race. I think every time we've mentioned one of these two cars, the other has been very, very close to them. But it does make for very, very good racing from our point of view. We will have a look at St. Rainer, who has, quite importantly, got himself within DRS range of Sir Shocks, but just as he went through turn 6, just fell outside of a second between himself and Sir Shocks, so unable to get that DRS coming down the straight. He is going to have to try and do it on fuel mix and ERS usage alone to see if he can close that gap. He is on slightly older medium tyres, and I say slightly because they are only 1 lap older than Sir Sharks' medium tyres. Jamie 29X is leading this race for the Racing Point team. Well, I say for the Racing Point team, for the Pit Stop boys, I should say. He's driving the Racing Point. I haven't really had a watch of Jamie 29X for a while, so we'll have a look at the battle between Jamie 29X and Fair Moto. Jamie does have a 1.8 second lead at present. I think Matty may possibly have a little battle for us further on down the grid.
No, sorry, I was going to go on to speak about Jamie 29X. He seems to be keeping a very consistent pace despite his laps being 1 lap older than Fair Moto. Fair Moto doesn't seem to be catching him very quickly.
Indeed, 1.6 seconds is the lead as these cars come up the DRS straight. Obviously, neither of these drivers able to deploy DRS as they are not within a second of each other as Jamie 29X comes through turn 10 now here on lap 26 of this French Grand Prix. We are going to go and jump very quickly. We've said his name many times this race. We're going to say it again. Bots Gerbil having a potential look on James F1 ETC. He's got DRS on that other Alfa Romeo. Is he going to make a move down the inside into turn 8? Has a little look, doesn't get anything there though. James F1 ETC able to maintain that car ahead. Little bit slidey by Bots Gerbil on exit of turn 10. He's not able to make that move. Falls back ever so slightly from that other Alfa Romeo car, and Bots Gerbil remains in P12.
Whilst that battle was going on, Thunderdome, who is down in P14, has gone in and fitted a set of soft tyres, so I assume he's going for the fastest lap of the race in this last lap.
He is indeed. We are watching the Josh 32, who has now been able to bridge a bit of a gap on AC Oakhill now, following that little spin from AC Oakhill a few laps ago. But you can see at the bottom right hand corner of the screen, the red fuel light is flashing now for the Josh 32, which basically is telling him, your tank's on empty, son. You are running on the dregs of what is in your fuel tank, so you need to really look after this car as he makes that DRS move on a Stallion, moves himself up into P4. A very strong drive there by the Josh 32 in the McLaren. As we just have a quick look and just see where Jamie 29X is. He's coming around turn 11, 1.2 seconds, 1.3 seconds is the gap between him and Fair Moto. I will let Matty keep an eye on some of the battles further down the grid as we watch our potential race winner take the final few corners here at France. Jamie 29X coming down the main straight, running out of fuel, but he's all good. He crosses the line, and Jamie 29X wins the French Grand Prix. Fair Moto finishing in second, with IRL Mats finishing in third. A very good race for the Xbox admin team, as the top 3 on the podium are all members of the admin team here in the Invictus Racing League.
Looks like James F1 is just going to be able to keep Bots Gerbil at bay as he goes across the flag, and that battle has finally been brought to an end only by the checkered flag. It was a fantastic race between those guys and the 2 Alfa Romeos. That whole five drivers all together for majority of the last stint there. Fantastic race between those guys.
Key thing to look at there though, guys, is despite James staying ahead of Bots Gerbil on track, it is Bots Gerbil that's going to finish higher than James F1 ETC, as James had many penalties as we just watched the final car of Thunderdome prepare to cross the line. We will go and get our podium places into the party with us so we can conduct some post-race interviews. But Matty, what a race that was!
It was absolutely fantastic, and just on a note, I believe Thunderdome may have set the fastest lap on the last lap of the race, so the soft tyres coming in for him, but it was an incredible race. Jamie did very well to win that race, but the two Alfa Romeos of Botch Gerbil racing fantastically well there. That battle seemed to be non-stop from my point of view, Keiran.
Indeed, it was. And those are invites sent to our 3 podium places. There is your podium that you see on screen there, ladies and gents. Whew! And we can all now take a little bit of a breather. And as Matty did correctly say, Thunderdome does get the fastest lap of the race on that final lap. But Jamie 29X takes the win for the Pit Stop Boys. Fairmoto in second place for Hotshot Racing, and Jamie 29X's teammate IRL Mats in the other Pit Stop Boys car rounding out the podium. The Josh 32 in P4, AC Oakhill, Stallion, St Johnston, Sync Rainer, Sir Sharks and Botch Gerbil round out your top 10, with Light Shock, James F1 ETC, DJ Danny, Thunderdome as your last 4 finishers. The 3 unclassified drivers, unfortunately, El Senado, Rasa 410 and Ice Cream 05. We have had a couple of guys join us into the party. Gentlemen, as always, please make sure that your party audio is included in the broadcast. We will start with our 3rd placed man, who was IRL Matt. Matt, a very, very good race for you. A P3, double podium for the Pit Stop Boys. You must be thrilled.
Yeah, it's a good weekend for us, and yeah, good race.
It was a very, very good race. Lots of battles there. You were having quite a few battles with a number of drivers. Towards the back of the end of the race there, you had the Josh 32, who was getting a little bit close. Were you worried that he was going to be able to make that move on you over the last few bits of the race, or did you have the confidence in your car that you were going to bring it home?
Nah, I knew from Tuesday that the hard tires wouldn't wear off that quickly. I also pitted quite late, so my tires were not worn that much at the end of the race. And with 7 laps to go, Josh was 7 seconds behind me, so he had to make up a second lap, and I thought that he wouldn't make that, so I wasn't really worried.
Good to hear. So as we say, the double podium finish for the Pit Stop Boys today, giving you 45 points in the constructors standings. Going to make things very, very interesting. Now should project you guys up the constructor standings just that little bit. With 3 races to go, do you think you've got it in the 2 of you to be able to potentially catch up to the guys in that Hotshot Racing and Shark Nipples teams?
I hope so. I'm not sure how many points we're exactly behind. Oh, 1 point. Oh no, I don't know. We are a few points behind them, I think, but yeah, we should be able to. But yeah, we'll just see. We'll make the most out of it, and yeah, some good, some fun races to be raced at yet.
Indeed, definitely. Next week, China. Is that a track you are a good around? Is it a track you're confident with, or one that you may potentially have a little bit of an issue on?
With a little bit of practice, I think I'm pretty confident on the track. Yeah, it's a good track, and yeah, I think it suits me quite a bit. Like from my driving style, quite cornery, and yeah, I like it.
Is good to hear. So congratulations on that P3, and we will let Matty move on to P2 and Fairmoto.
Hello Fairmoto, how are you, buddy?
Yeah, good mate, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. I needed a bit of a rest after that race, and I'm sure you feel exactly the same. It was a fantastic race from our perspective. What was it like from yours?
Probably quiet. You know, I mean, yeah, you know, it's the kind of race where you kind of, you know, you're really consistent in the lap times, but, you know, credit to Jamie, you know, I think he deserves a win. Yeah, well done to him. He did a good job today, and yeah, it might not be the first podium he gets, so yeah, well done to him.
Is good to hear. So congratulations on that P3 and Fairmoto. We will let Matty move on to P2 and Fairmoto.
Yeah, well done to him.
Is good to hear. So congratulations on that P3 and Fairmoto. We will let Matty move on to P2 and Fairmoto.
Yeah, well done to him.
He certainly did run a very good race. You seem to have a fantastic start. For the first few laps, you seem to just be flying through the grid. Was that the plan all along with your strategy, to push really hard in the first few laps?
I definitely dropped back a wee bit and start running no traction control. You know, naturally you're going to lose out a wee bit. Then there was a pile up turn 2. I don't know what happened there, but I dropped behind 1 or 2 cars. So yeah, I had to get to think about it and try overtake them and make up for any ground that I lost. But yeah, at the end of the day, I don't think it changed the result today. Maybe I would have been a wee bit closer to Jamie, but nah, I don't think I would have beaten him today. Or I don't think I would have wanted to beat him as well. So yeah, fair enough.
Seems to be a very good relationship there between you and Jamie29X, but you ran an absolutely fantastic race. Was it just the pace that Jamie had that was stopping you from being able to push harder, or was it the tyres that gave him such a lead?
Well, he got the undercut on me, so I think he gained like around about 1.5 seconds or 2 seconds or something like that. And when you're quite level in performance, between me and him, when you lose like 1.5 seconds, 2 seconds, you can't really make up for that. So yeah, maybe in strategy he was a wee bit better on me tonight. And yeah, overall I think he deserved to win. Fair play.
Sorry, I couldn't hear your answer there. I'm sure it was a very good answer. Unfortunately, it seemed to be a bit of technical difficulty. So I'll pass you over to Keiran, and Keiran can ask you any more questions he's got.
Not a problem. Thank you, Matty. So, fair moto. Keith, getting yourself a nice little healthy 22 points on the board there, helping out the Hotshot Racing team in those constructors standings. With 3 races to go next week in China, have you and Danny got what it takes over the next 3 races to maintain that top spot?
Yeah, I hope so. It's definitely the plan, but obviously it is dependent on car allocations. But yeah, we've led out the majority of the season, so it'd be a pity not to win.
It will be a very big pity for you guys not to win. China next week. I will slightly repeat the question that I did ask Matt. Is China a track that you are comfortable with? I know that there are quite a few drivers that do struggle with the Sector 1 there in China, but do you find yourself able to sort of control the car quite well through there, or?
Depends on the car, yeah. Equal performance, yeah, it's a good track for me. I've been on the podium there before, but yeah, now that I'm on the podium again, it might be quite a poor car next week. So yeah, we'll wait and see, but yeah, I enjoy it nonetheless, and yeah, I'll be going there to get the best result that I can.
Indeed. Massive congratulations to you, Fairmoto, for that P2. Thank you very much. And on to Jamie29X as a commentator for the F1 division. I think I can quite comfortably say, finally, we're able to have a chat with you on a podium. You get the race win tonight. How does it feel, mate?
Absolutely buzzing, mate. First win in IRL, first podium in IRL, it's just amazing.
Yeah, I can imagine that was the case, because it was a very, very long time coming. But you were finally able to get yourself on the top step of that podium. You looked to have that race pretty much in control from the moment you did those pit stops and was able to get that undercut on Fairmoto. Once you'd realised that you had that lead, was it just a case of, I need to just stay consistent, just put in consistent lap times, not make any mistakes, and the win's mine?
More or less, yeah. I, from the very start after the pit stop, I'd done my out lap and I pushed on that one to try and make the undercut work. And after that it was about preserving the fuel, preserving the ERS, and preserving the tyres as long as I could, so that if he did get close, I had the tools to pull away again.
Yeah, of course. So, as I said to Matt, it's a double podium for the pit stop boys. Must boost your confidence going into China, especially with this now being your first win in IRL.
Definitely. I had the chat with Matt last week. I said to him, we're on for a very good shot in the constructors if we can just pull some good results together for the rest of the season. And I think the first race after saying that, getting a double podium with a win and a third place is just the way you want to start it, really, isn't it?
Indeed, most definitely. So with those 3 races to go, China, Spain, and then of course the season ender in Singapore, 3 tracks you're comfortable with? 3 tracks do you feel confident around? Or could we see some interesting strategies from you coming over the next few weeks?
Well, I mean, China is a track that I do like, so that one could be very, very good for me. Spain, not so much, but again, it's not a track that I hate. And Singapore, it's just a case of keeping it out of the walls, really. So yeah, it's gonna be good.
Indeed, I think we have hopefully got Matty back with us now. He was having a few issues with his microphone. Hopefully Matty is back with us in the party. Matty, are you back with us, mate? That's not a problem. Have you got any questions you would like to ask Jamie before we wrap up the stream this evening?
Thank you very much.
Indeed, thank you to the guys on the podium here in France, and a massive congratulations to all 3 of them. Jamie 29X was the man that got himself onto the top step of the podium, his first win in IRL, so definitely massive congratulations to him. But that does, however, bring us to the end of our broadcast this evening. A massive thank you as always to everyone who has joined us this evening and does continue to show support to IRL on Twitch. IRL Xbox will be back on your screens next Tuesday when myself and Dom the Noodle take you through the action in the F1 Xbox League from the Chinese Grand Prix. And then next Thursday it will be the main man Andrew back here with Matty for the realistic performance division, so please join us then. But for more IRL racing action, be sure to head over to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/InvictusRL. Follow us on Twitter at InvictusRL. If you want to get involved in the Xbox side of things, it is at InvictusRL_Xbox. You can find us on Instagram at Invictus Racing League, and of course the Invictus website is InvictusRacingLeague.com. But until next time, from myself, Keiran92, and Matt, thank you for watching. Good night.